Interior, dark recording room. Nicky takes a hit of weed, puffs in, gradually exhales, sighs, ponders existence and the purpose of his own life, presses button on iPhone, begins recording. Hello, I am Nicky Moon, and welcome to the Nicky Moon Podcast, where each week I have a guest on the show, and together we try to solve the riddles and intricacies of my own mind. Tonight's guest goes by many names and has many origins. He takes on many appearances and has made cameos in just about every medium of entertainment. What we traditionally do know about him within the confines of Christianity and Islam is that he is usually seen as either a fallen angel or a jinn, who used to possess great piety and beauty, but rebelled against God, who nevertheless allows him temporary power over the fallen world and a host of demons. Pretty bad guy. Will you please welcome to the show the ruler of the natural world and eternal prosecutor, Satan. All my life I grew up in the big city. When I listen to myself talk, I sound a bit crazy. I'm calling a certain location a city when most people would call it, an uninhabitable, horrific nightmare. But you know what most people see is either pandemonium and utter chaos. I tend to look at it from a, much broader perspective. I have to. The thing about my job and the thing about what I like to think about what I do is, it's all about maintaining balance, and it's ultimately extremely necessary if you to really think about it. It really does call to mind that very old expression, and correct me if I'm doing it wrong. Would you rather be a servant in heaven or a ruler in hell? And I can tell you from first-hand experience, I'd rather be the ruler, under the very small stipulation that I'm able to stretch my legs with a media appearance, every now and then. Give me a chance to maybe clear my name just a little bit. Well, Satan, thank you so much for being on the show. And if I don't want to interrupt you, Nicky, too much, but on the topic of my name, I would actually really appreciate it if you would not refer to me by Satan. That, of course, is my father's name. I would maybe prefer if you would to go by my birth name, Lucifer. You could even call me Lenny if you prefer that. I completely understand. I really don't like it when people call me Nick. So we can start again. Lucifer or Lenny, I'm very sorry, Nicky, to interrupt you again, but I'm hearing myself speak out loud, and now I truly do feel like my father. You can call me whatever you want. If you prefer Satan, you can call me Satan. I don't care either way. Well, this is a show all about you. I want to make you feel most at home and most comfortable. And it just got me a little confused. Would you rather me call you Satan, Lucifer, or Lenny? Well, if you're really putting together all three options, I would like to maybe, add a fourth option to that. And I would maybe prefer it if you were to refer to me as Beelzebub, the great seducer of evil. Whoa, Beelzebub. I'm sorry, did I offend you in any way? No, actually, that's just a bit of a joke. I do apologize, but actually I really do feel like that's actually one of the more common misconceptions there is about me, is that, I don't have a sense of humor. And in reality, I'm always up for, a good gag or, a good bit. You bring up a very interesting point there, Satan. What are some of the things that make you laugh? Well, I'm very situational humor always gets a chuckle out of me. A lot of Charlie Chaplin's earlier work, Abbott and Costello, of course, are classics. I even, outside of the comedy medium, I even feel like, the filmmaker Sidney Lumet and the jazz musician, Benny Goodman has, sensitive humor in their own mediums. You don't necessarily have to be, a set-up, pun, gag, whatever you want to call it. And of course, I'm naming a bunch of old school comedians. I think that I would even like to consider myself, a bit old school. Old school is a bit of an understatement. Exactly how old are you? Technically, I'm as old as time itself, but I still feel like a young man. Well, for being as old as time itself, you certainly look great. Do you have any health secrets? Well, actually, for the first 100 years or so, I was definitely very vegetarian, but now I'm strictly vegan. A lot of lentils, a lot of spinach, carrots, apples. I call it, the Paul McCartney diet. Speaking of apples, I would love to hear what your thoughts are on Adam and Eve. Very nice, splendid people. Every now and then I still get coffee with them. Very lovely. A bit gullible for my taste. But of course, ignorance is bliss, as they say. Is everyone born a sinner, Satan? It's a very, very interesting question. Well, I think that that's exactly what the mainstream media would want you to think. Of course, heaven, hell, good, evil. But, in reality, it's really all under the same umbrella. I myself would consider myself, repeating the words, I would consider myself an atheist. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit confused. How can you be an atheist if you yourself exist? Well, that's up to debate as well, but, thinking about things in a very linear way and trying to avoid being caught up in a philosophical, existential conundrum. I know I exist, but I don't know if God exists. I've never actually met the man. So wait, you've never met God? I don't know if I believe you, Satan. I mean, if you were truly rooting for the damnation of all souls, wouldn't you want me to believe that there is no God, so that I would be under the impression that my good deeds would reap no just rewards? Not necessarily. Hell, much like New York, is, very overcrowded, it's overbearing, and to be frank with you, I honestly don't think that we can fit anymore. And I think the question that you should be asking yourself, Nicky, is, do you believe in God? Well, you got me there, Satan. I mean, I certainly believe in the voices inside my head, but I guess that's about it. I guess I'm just trying to play devil's advocate with you. And this is something I've always been curious about. What's hell actually like? Yeah, I can tell you one thing. It's nearly not as bad as what people say it is, really. I mean, think about it. After you go through the first 1,000 years or so, eventually torture doesn't become that torturous. You become numb to the pain. So, when you're put in charge of running an internal damnation for these poor souls and developing ways to maybe torture them, especially me when such a young age, this is a couple of the questions that we had to ask ourselves. What's there left to torture after, the application of time has been put in? So what we did instead, in the brain trust down in hell, is after you develop, some tenure in hell, it eventually becomes very equivalent to, a very lovely retirement home. Not, the best retirement home, but a retirement home nonetheless. So it's still hell, so the activities, can become, a bit monotonous. Lots of bingo, the Steve Harvey show. Also, there's no sense of time in hell. It's something I'm very particular, being very proud of. So no one knows exactly how long they've been down there or why they're down there. We've erased long-term memory and short-term memory. So you always, forgetting where you put your car keys. It's an ongoing gag that we have. So, it still is torture, in a way, but not nearly as bad as, what people say. We are running out of time there, Satan. But do you have any piece of advice that you could give or just bestow upon us mere mortals? Well, from the very beginning, I've always said that life is a very grim enterprise. I believe that people can be divided into two sections. There's the horrible and the miserable. And I'll describe those sections. The horrible is the group made up of, the disabled, the incurable diseases, the unfortunate accidents that leave you scarred forever. When you think about their lives, I don't know how they do it. And then there's the miserable, which is everybody else. So when you go through life, Nicky, you should be very thankful that you're miserable. Inspiring words from Satan himself. Satan, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. I know you're very busy. And in a few moments, my final thoughts. But first, a word from our sponsors.
I don't know. Maybe throw some lettuce on there and some onions and I don't know. Maybe throw just some I don't know. Just throw some cheese on there or something. Just do it. And mayo. Lots of mayo. Lots and lots of mayo.
Subway, eat fresh. I can think of no better way of ending tonight's episode than reading to you an excerpt from the book Life on Mars, a collection of poems written by Tracy K. Smith. This one is entitled The Soul. The voice is clean, has heft, like stones, dropped in still water or tossed, one after the other at a low wall, chipping away at what pushes back, but not always making a dent, but keeping at it, and the silence around it is a door, punched through with light, a garment, that attests to breasts, the privacy between thighs. The body is what we lean toward, tensing as it darts, dancing away, but it's the voice that enters us, even saying nothing, over and over, absently to itself. Well, that has been today's episode of the Nicky Moon Podcast. I want to thank you so much for listening. I want to thank my guest, Satan. Very good to have him on the show. Very good. Felt like I learned a lot. But again, I want to thank you for listening. And stay tuned for next week's episode. I don't know who the guest is, but I'm sure